Laurie Robolewski, Sharon Vantini, Bill Hutchinson, Sue Sisson, Mike Fay, Mike Deckelman, Wilma Denton, Dan Cavanaugh, and Diana Shady.
And Bob Bauer.
And Bob. Oh, you were. And Butch Weinkel.
And I'm Carol Harper, and I'm this recording secretary.
How come you're not up here, Carol?
I chose not. This is not a board meeting. This is a property owner meeting.
Thank you.
The first thing I'd like to do is very quickly go through what's in that packet. Remember, today we are doing an analysis of the transfer of assets. If you all choose, the board had made a motion last meeting, we will vote the way you all choose. We all have our individual votes, but we will do what the community decides. 606 envelopes have been prepared. There's a postcard in each envelope. That is your vote. The vote will be mailed back to our CPA, who actually controls the nominations for the board of directors. In your packet, you have a timeline. There were so many abuses towards me for taking this upon myself and making a decision. That is not true. You have exactly when and who were talked to on behalf of the board. You have our best estimate of the water cost and then an analysis. It seems that every 3 to 5 years we have major expenses that are included in your dues money. You have a sample of the iron distribution to the homes. Okay, we took the water reports that are given to Delaware Drinking Water and averaged and actually put it on a chart. Artesian's recognition by the Center for Disease Control. I have no idea who sent that to me. It was in my mailbox in the office. Our accountant, Andy Raleigh, will speak to taxation. If we were to decide to sell our assets, he will speak to the taxability, and he's already told me this morning it's going to require more research, but at this point it is taxable. Andy said that. Robert Wheatley of the Weiland Group is a gentleman who's conducting our reserve study. It will give you a lifespan and cost of replacement of fixed assets. The study is in the works. It has not been completed. He felt strongly about this, and out of nowhere, Wednesday or Thursday, I think it was, we received a letter from him telling everybody that inflation has seriously reflected upon the future for Swan Keys. Dan Barbaco, our water engineer, cannot be here. Had numerous correspondence and back and forth, which I have with him every month. And he totaled all his thoughts into one letter. It's in your packet. Please read the letter. Mr. Hutt is a partner with Morrison James. He has been our attorney through at least 5 to 6 years that I know of. And I have a lot of confidence in his ability. He knows more about the documents of Swan Keys than anybody in this room. Okay? And then correspondence with Artesian, which is very limited, because they're coming to give us their presentation on what they think they could do for us. That all being said, change the page. David, I really had you as first to speak. Your letter that you had sent previously, and then followed up with another letter, has been, sentences have been taken out of that letter and shared with many people. But, I mean, if you could speak to that, it deals mostly with people sharing water and having no control on the water usage within Swan Keys. We don't have any control today, but that's the part they felt was significant to put out. So if you'd like to take the floor, there's a microphone right on the podium.
Point of order before you even get started. Laura Godlinski is not a member of the board, according to the bylaws, until tomorrow. When it is announced at the board meeting, the board member was removed and was replaced by Laura.
John Vai was removed from the board at the last board meeting through a vote, okay?
You cannot do it now.
We're not voting today on anything because it's not a board meeting. Thank you, Claire, for your input. David?
Good morning. As was introduced a few moments ago by Mr. Kirkley, my name is David Hutt. I'm a partner with Morris James. I recognize some faces here that I've had some meetings with over the last several years. Recognize some of the board members that I've worked with over the last couple of years. It sounds like from Mr. Kirkley's comments to me that some of the questions have been in the letter that I sent, which was in the form of an email to Mr. Kirkley. I highlighted some potential concerns that Swan Keys residents may have, and some of those are what I'll call just common sense, practical concerns, and some of those are actual experiences. As you would imagine, Swan Keys isn't the only community or group of homeowners that I represent. There are many homeowners associations that I represent and have represented over the past almost 2 decades now. And so one of the concerns that I had, and I think it's what was just referenced by Mr. Kirkley, is that I have represented communities that have basically one master meter for a particular utility. And oftentimes this leads to some, what I'll call infighting between various residents. As I look out here and think about the Swan Keys community and what I know of it, I recognize that there are people who live here full-time year-round. There are people who are part-time residents. There are probably people who lease their units to other individuals. And there are folks who probably enjoy all the water activities and have to hose off jet skis and boats and clean fish and crabs, hopefully, and all those things. And so all of those things, one neighbor might say, well, all I do is come here and, cook food and leave and bathe. And so I'm a very light water user as compared to somebody who enjoys it full time and has a large family and invites other families to come use it. And so I have seen in other communities where that leads to controversy and dissension and a lot of finger pointing about who's using how much water and why. And then you get into a water police situation, which of course is never easy for anybody. It wouldn't be easy for any board member, and it obviously can lead to other consternation. Another concern that was referenced in there was, in my email, was that what Artesian's proposal involves is obviously the purchase of certain assets, and of course the community then owns everything on what I'll call the community side of the water meter to each of your individual houses or properties. And I think they have a representative here, so this can be addressed probably in this forum as well. But one concern I have is that if there is a water quality concern in the future, that there becomes a little bit of finger pointing between the board and if it were Artesian who would do this, about whose fault that is. Artesian could say, clearly it's on the Swan Key side of the meter, and the board could say, we think it's on Artesian's side of the meter. And those are discussions that certainly I think there's an answer that an engineer or scientist could clearly figure out. You can evaluate those things and go forward and do studies and figure those out. But in the interim, there is the possibility of further consternation on that subject matter. Having said those two things, I think it was also in my email and letter that in general, the operation of a utility, such as a sanitary sewer service, a potable water service, which you're talking about here this morning, in general, those are things that many of the communities that I know of that have been involved in that have not liked to be involved in. There is always, the government never regulates less, so there's always an increasing amount of regulation and an increasing amount of requirements on those. And certainly, people often look to, and other communities that I have represented have looked to have other providers, such as Artesian, Tidewater, all the public utility companies that are out there, help come in and take over and run those things because obviously it's what they do 24/7, And so they have a level of expertise in those matters that everyone can benefit from because it's what they do day in and day out. Having said that, I think that's a quick summary of my letter, George.
Yeah,
and if you-
now I'm gonna ask for questions, but please, keep it to 1 minute. Let David answer you at the end of this session, after Artesian has spoken, okay, which is at 12 o'clock. After this session, Kevin is gonna stay behind. A little bit of background for Kevin. He teaches the
Microphone, please.
He teaches the class for licensed water engineers at Del Tech. His license number is 0001. He installed your system in the 90s, okay? And that's why when Dan was unable to make it, Kevin, boy, I couldn't believe it, and he volunteered to do this, all right? So if you have a question, I'm sorry, okay, just give me a minute. They're a little nervous up here. If you have a question for David, please just keep it concise, and we'll go from there. David, are you going to stay through the Artesian proposal? They tell me to take 45 minutes.
I can.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Much like Farm, just overall. Now, I just had a question as far as backup water supply. David? Mike Farr, just a resident overall now. I just had a question as far as like the county code, as far as the backup water supply. Do we meet the code for backup water supply, or are we in any kind of violation?
That's going to be a Kevin question. He actually consults the legislators on future laws and everything, but Kevin will be Kevin will be the answer to that type of question. He actually consults the legislature on future regulations, okay? So if you don't mind, we'll hold that one for a minute.
Well, I would think it would be obvious if we are not in compliance with the Sussex County codes as far as backup water supply, we should know about that, right? It seemed like, just looking at all the documentation, the thing that kind of initially kicked this off and spurred it off was like, we didn't have emergency backup water. But from what I understand, you know, we got the holding tank out there. We do have backup water to some extent. And then, you know, I mean, with normal construction, right, I mean, if you have a water main that needs to be fixed or a break, normal construction, you shut the system down at 4 hours, you make the correction, and you're back online. So, I don't understand the whole issue of the backup water supply per se.
That's not an issue for today. Today is selling the asset. Operational, we would discuss. Operationally, we would discuss the vault and the backup water supply, which I made the mistake of calling emergency water. It's consistent water flow. That's what we're looking for. And I personally thought they were going to tell me they could run a hose from the tank to our tank. Well, it turns out it's much more complicated than that. So, you know, I don't have an answer. What we're talking about today is, can Artesian more economically and more physically responsibly handle our water? Can they give us better water than we have today and meet the regulations of the state? We are in compliance with all regulations because every year they come in and they actually ask us questions. Okay, and they take their own sample.
So that would be part two as far as the water quality. Are we in compliance with Safe Drinking Water Act, which I understand that we are? We are. So, I mean, it seems like there's two basic points.
Okay.
And my quick response to those, and one thing I would agree with Mr. Kirkley about is that the question about the backup water supply or the continuing water supply is a question best left to the community's engineers, and that, to my knowledge, it's actually what I had written down before Mr. Kirkley said that, the community has never received a notice of violation, and its water quality has been in compliance with those standards. So the direct answer to that question is, at the moment, you haven't received a notice of violation. But that, having said that, that doesn't mean that best practices and best water usage doesn't have a backup continuing water supply or some means of doing that. And my understanding, and I could be wrong, and Mr. Burdette can correct me then, is that that's part of this process, is looking to make sure that there is a source for that backup water supply. Whether or not it's required, it still may be prudent to make sure that you have that. And again, those are questions that are not within my legal genre, but those are just questions that I think the community and the board members should be interested in understanding.
We do 30 to 40,000 gallons a day on a normal, this time of year. In the summer, we can do up to 100,000 gallons a day, all right?
What's the well produce a day? Have you taken a measurement on the gallons per hour?
The engineer is not here, sir.
I think
We do have that, by the way, when we had to replace the well.
Well, you should know your numbers, and I think your water
No,
engineer.
you got it wrong.
Been here.
You got it wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to know the numbers. The engineer is supposed to know
Are
the
you the
numbers.
president of the board? If you're the president of the board, you better know your numbers.
I manage commercial real estate property assets, and not angry one way or the other with respect to this. Has it all been a life cycle cost analysis done on this with respect to continuing with the asset, disposing of the asset, or I'm gonna throw something out there that's even different. Since we own the asset, leasing the asset to our teaching, and you still own the real property rights. I mean, I do commercial federal real estate, and that's what I do. And, you know, just getting rid of the asset, I'm not angry one way or the other. I just wanna kinda wrap my head around the financials up front is what you gotta get to. And that's it. So, that's the end of the question.
And I think that
Please and thank you.
certainly, the answer to that question, I believe, is that the Whalen Company is currently about to complete your analysis of your capital improvements, which would include your water system. And so the purpose of your reserve study, which is what Bob Wheatley from the Whalen Company is working on for you, is to do that reserve analysis to see what this life cycle and what's the remainder life for each of the capital improvements that you have, including your water system. So I think that as soon as that reserve study is completed, you will have the answer to those answers that you're looking for.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really the analysis that you need to make an intelligent decision on this then, correct?
That is certain, you would want to know, again, to value an asset, you need to know what its useful life is.
What about the lease chunk that I mentioned? Leasing to our teaching, are they not receptive to such a
We
thing?
haven't answered them, you can answer them if you
Okay, cool.
We asked him if he could, we asked him if he could buy the whole system, and the answer was, we're not willing to put $2 to $3 million into Swan Keys. We have run an engineering study, and it was done last year. Copies are available in the office, and it tells us what the water engineer feels we need to do to continue upgrading. We are nowhere near finished upgrading. Actually, in this study, I read it last night on purpose, he's recommending $30,000 to $50,000 a year be put in a reserve account just for water problems in the future. Okay, we've replaced 6 tanks. We haven't replaced anything else. Okay, I tried to get a value of the wells. You know, is there a dollar amount? There's Mr. Jerry Esposito, and he used to be the CEO of Tidewater. He really said it wouldn't. He didn't give me an answer. He said it won't be anywhere near $500,000. Okay. But then he had the Tidewater district manager call me, and this was all happening Wednesday. He said no way he could give us figures on anything in 2 days without analyzing the system and taking well samples and things of that nature.
Hi, my name's Tom Nocella, and I just have a question. I don't know who it's going to be addressed to, but
The email or the letter that went out to the whole community stated in that letter that the comments from the lawyer and comments from the accountant would be provided. We never got that until today. That's not enough time to digest what's in those letters to come to a meeting and raise questions to these guys, these gentlemen. Furthermore, why are we only, there was 3 proposals by artisans. Why are we only discussing selling our assets to them? Why aren't we discussing other proposals? And my third question is, why don't we do like we always do, go out and get multiple bids? Why are we only going to artisan? Our Culligan proposal. I don't know any other water companies that are out here, but why aren't we doing that? Because that's our standard practice. Thank you.
Sharp Culligan is not in the water business, they're in the repair business. Number one, they have never addressed us with any ideas to discuss, and we are always open to discuss taking over the water system, okay? Actually, when we asked them for their opinion on what their contract for $1,300 a month included, it was, oh, we take the measurements, and I like Sharp Culligan, don't misunderstand me. There's need for improvement, and I've got it from all the experts. But the truth of the matter is, they do come when we call, but they don't do any preventive maintenance. And that's what we asked them when we pulled their contract out. Number 2, it's very difficult to find someone who wants to do business with Swan Keys. The problem is, I have no idea, it was before me. And the other water company is Tidewater, and we've been in contact with them. 3 weeks after we made the initial contact, they called. 3 weeks. Anyway, so the only proposal and the reason we're looking at this proposal today is because of the fact it was very obvious to the board, you all want to vote on this, you're going to vote on this. I was not going to let you vote until the ballot went out with the board of directors and the budget and everything, but it was made obvious to us, you want to vote now, vote. But please, listen to what these gentlemen have to say. Nobody here is an expert on water, but I'll tell you that whole black briefcase over there is nothing but water that I've learned in a year and a half. Butch, for 1 year, has been working on water with me. Really, we can talk to the water system. All those parts laying there are parts out of your water system that broke. All those pictures. You know, I don't know what to say. So,
That's normal usage.
Tom, is you? Oh,
That's normal usage. Sorry.
Jordan, your response again was only for one proposal, and that's selling our assets. There's 3 proposals, tying in, sending out a technician, which would be very similar to Sharp Culligan, okay? So I don't know why we're not even discussing that today, you know what I mean? Why are we only discussing selling our assets?
the reason we're not discussing the other 2 proposals, they would require additional benefits. It is operational in nature. And I'm going to ask Dan to speak to the voting procedures and what's actually in our professional documents that have been followed about the voting. Remember I asked you, should it be, Dave, I'm sorry, should it be the majority of the votes received, or should it be anything over 304 that would make a decision on this? Okay, in our board meeting, a motion was made. We will support the people. And I've told them, if it's a tie vote, I have a split board. If it's a tie vote, I personally would have to vote. The only time I get to vote, I will vote whatever the people say. And they all know that. But I have a split board. So could you explain the Articles of Incorporation and
what the Articles of Incorporation do, and it sounds like there was a vote that modified this slightly. The Articles of Incorporation give the power, as you would anticipate, a board of directors has the power to manage the assets of the corporation which it's operating. And so, while everybody thinks of this as a community, and it is, the structure by which you operate is a corporate structure. You're a Delaware corporation. You're obviously not a for-profit corporation, but you're a Delaware corporation. So you have a board of directors that manages the affairs of the community, and all facets of that. Swan Keys, as you know, is very unique. Most communities of your nature would have a declaration that was recorded in the Office of the Recorder of Deeds that some developer plotted 606 lots and subjected them all to one set of restrictive covenants, and then there would be a process in there. All the processes and such would be in there. As I think you know, because you probably hear it regularly, I know the board does from me, Swan Keys was created differently than that. Swan Keys is the subject of a 1985 court order. And so you don't have the traditional declaration. Now that court order is required, and I would say almost de facto operates as the declaration by which your community is administered or run. But the board of directors, that's a little side trip here, but the board of directors is charged with the operations of the community as well as buying, selling the assets of the community. And so in this circumstance, what would be involved is the sale of personal property, and that would be the water plant and its attachments and the other parts of that system. And then an easement would have to be granted, and an easement is a right in land, which is a right in real property. So there would be both the board, if it were to act on the proposal from Artesian, would be selling personal property, the water system, and providing a real property right to Artesian, easements and such to operate the system. And the articles of incorporation are clear, and the bylaws reinforce this, that those are decisions and powers that rest with the board of directors. What the board, it sounds like, and I was not aware of it until it was said this morning, but it sounds like what the board has decided to do is to learn from the community what the community's position is on the proposal from Artesian, and then follow that as the ultimate, guide for this matter. So in some respects, it seems like some of that power has been returned, that the board has been returned back to the community.
Thank you.
Can I borrow you one? Sure. Thank you. I'm Tom Carney. Most of you know me. My questions are $500,000 proposal. At $500,000, now I'm in real estate, as you also know. We got homes valued more than $500,000 here now. Now $500,000, what's happening with $500,000 is you'll probably, if this is supposed to be what I think an our accountant will cover this is taxable. So that means 40% is coming off of $500,000. So, you know, you don't have to, you know the math here. So that really lowers that $500,000. Now, we spent and invested, and I don't have these figures, but thousands of dollars in that water building. And in the last month and a half, this water has been pretty good. We just put new baths in. I don't see stains. I don't see the yellow stain. To go out in the public, maybe 6 months ago, I had to put perfume on to go out because I smell like rotten eggs. When you wash your dishes and use the dishwasher, there was an odor. Now we're giving away all that money that we invested for $500,000. Okay, now the bigger thing is, if we sell this, we can't go back. If we're not happy with Artesian, we are stuck. And if Artesian, and believe me, I believe in what you believe in, but I think we're to look out for the community, and the community is what's best for you and our pockets. And I thank the board from after a debatable, and thank you, board, for letting the community take a vote. Because the other thing, before I get back to order, and I'll make this very brief, our articles of incorporation should be changed.
Yes.
When 15 people, now, not 15 people, because we got 15 board members. The only thing you need is the majority of that board. That means you got 7 people, okay? 8 people controls the vote. But 7 people control your destiny. Your investments in this property, that you've been here for 40 years, or if you just got here, and you're putting nice homes in here, but you have somebody else dictating to you. That's not right. And I think there should be legal means to do that. Now let me get back to the order. We got a proposal saying it's gonna be X amount of hours a month. Okay, $17, comes to 170, let's say close to $200 a year. Now, there's some people that I know that I've sold to that were living in Shady Park, some still do, and there's some people that moved from Shady Park here. And if one of you are here tonight, maybe you ought to come up and verify what I'm saying. $17, Shady Park in the beginning. They're paying $50 now, a month. That's a hell of a big difference. Now, you're giving that right up when you sell your asset. Now, the other, a master meter, Artesian says, notified us that they have many communities with 1 meter. I don't know of any, and I covered this area pretty good for all the years. So I don't know of any community, so if somebody could enlighten me about many communities that only have 1 meter. Because 600 people in here, I can see this room, there's gonna be a problem. Now, because why are we in such a big rush that we have to make this decision so quickly? This means a lot. This is a major decision. And I appreciate everything that the board's doing and getting this together, and it's a hell of a job, and you're in the middle of getting all kind of stuff, and I wouldn't be president. I wouldn't want to be in your shoes now, George, okay? Because you're in a no-win position. But what I'm saying is, I don't know what's in the package, I haven't looked at it, but the mailing that you gotta do, you're gonna get a postcard to mail, and this postcard's gotta be mailed back in how many days? April 5th. Okay, so that's a week and a half to 2 weeks. Now, some people are not here.
3 weeks.
In 3 weeks. Okay. Don't you think we should have 30 days to 60 days to make a decision? Why should we have to wait? Okay. Now, also, I've been told that it's, we got about $20,000 more. Now, I'm not the expert, but it was said that we only need $20,000 more to have a top of the line water plant, okay? Well, the only thing I'm saying, I don't, you got your comments, please. But the only thing we're saying is we're getting comments. There's a letter. Now, the other question I got, to be fair, we've had Sharp Culligan, and I don't care who, if anybody can help us, fine, that's the object, helping us. But Sharp Culligan's been working in here. They've been doing things. If you got the letter, I don't have to read it to you. But they've been denied to come to this meeting to talk to us. So it seems like it's all one-sided here. But why can't we have, there are experts, we have experts here, but I think you need to hear, and that's the reason this letter was given out from Sharp Culligan. And I hope I don't get them in any legal problems for this letter going out. Other subject, and I'll get on because my time frame's going. Okay, well,
I'd like to ask
The Gulligan, why was he denied?
Culligan has nothing to do with the transfer of assets. They cannot furnish, Culligan cannot furnish you water. Culligan is a repair company for filters and things of that nature, but they don't have any, Culligan doesn't furnish water.
but Culligan, George,
Why are we concentrating on the state?
let me, George, can I conclude?
Why are we concentrating on
Let
the
me,
state?
my time limit's over. The only thing I'm saying, Culligan cannot supply it. What we need We need a preventive maintenance. The reasons we had problems in that building is neglect of that building, no preventative maintenance in that building, and we need a water operator. We need a certified water operator. If it's Culligan, whoever, and I think our problems will be solved. Thank you for the time.
I just wanted to say a few things. My name's Lou Purdy. I run a plumbing, heating, and air conditioning business out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I was certified inspector by the International Code Council. I do a lot of inspections, especially on well systems. What I see here is, I see a system that is very repairable by each and every homeowner. If you have a system, and I've worked on systems like this, if you have somebody who has knowledge of what's going on with their system here, and if you're a plumber or you have any maintenance background, this system is very easily to be maintained and repaired. I do it every day. I do a plant that does 4 million people a year for an ice hockey rink. We run our own plant. We use the same material. I see a community that I just moved into last year. I see a great community, a bunch of people out here that are all active and want to be here and learn about their water system. I think what you need is what this gentleman just said. Preventive maintenance, hire somebody, do what you got to do your own system. Own your own system. Do not give up your system. Do not sell your system out. I'm serious. I've seen it happen. I've dealt with artisan in Landenberg, Pennsylvania. And let me tell you what, your bills are going to increase. And I can guarantee you they're going to increase. I do this for a living for the last 30 some odd years. I was a military vet in the U.S. Navy. I went to machinist school as a pipe fitter. This stuff is easy to maintain. You just need to have somebody out here who maintains your system, and it's cheaper to hire somebody to do it than hire out to artisan. God bless America.
Mr. Hunt, this is actually a legal question. It's a legal question. A couple years ago, my wife and I moved into a condo association up in near Baltimore. At the time, they messed up what condo buildings were in what condo association. And so they had to straighten that out. In the process of doing that, we questioned, why don't we put everybody in one condo association? And the reason they told us then is that because so many people had mortgages with different mortgage companies, that any one of those mortgage companies who questioned or refused to agree with this could stop the whole process. Now in here, I imagine quite a few people own their own homes because the place has been here for a while. But a lot of us, maybe not. So basically, anybody in this community right now who holds a mortgage with any company, would they not have to get permission from that mortgage company before the board could sell an asset in this community? No. Since they have a fiduciary interest in it.
The short answer to that question is no. In the condominium complex, and I'm duty bound to tell you I am not a Maryland attorney, not licensed in Maryland, so I can't comment on Maryland law, so I'll comment on condos in Delaware. In Delaware, most condominium documents, probably 99 out of 100, or maybe even 100 out of 100, if there's going to be any material change to the community, the lender has to, a person with a first mortgage lien holder has to be notified. This is not a condominium. You are a single-family home community, and so there's different declaration types for condominiums than there are for Swan Keys, for example. There are single-family communities like this that have similar requirements in their declaration, and that's one of the things I commented on before. You don't have a traditional declaration that would even sort of contemplate those sorts of things. So in this circumstance, there are circumstances that what you said would be exactly correct. Swan Keys is not one of those circumstances, and so nobody would have to notify their mortgage holder, their mortgage holder or their lender, because the documents don't require that, and the law in general does not require that. I'm gonna take one quick, I know there's other people who want to speak, I'll take one quick moment. Mr. Carney indicated that perhaps the Articles of Incorporation or other documents should be amended. There is probably not a person in this room or on that board that wouldn't agree with that statement. However, it's almost, I don't want to say impossible because I don't like saying things are impossible. But modifying a court order, when somebody asks any lawyer, you could be in the first year of law school, how do you modify a court order? Probably the immediate answer without thinking is going to be with a court order. And in order to get a court order to modify your restrictive covenants, which are in a court order, would most likely require a court order, and the expense of undertaking that would be significant. If you've looked at the 1985 action or seen it, that was a class action that involved all the parties. So essentially there would be 606 people to be involved in the class action to modify the court order so that you could have probably a more traditional declaration. It would be wonderful if that were to happen. The board would be easier to administer, it'd be easier to amend the documents, because certainly things that were significant in 1985 may not be as significant in 2019 or 10 or 20 years from now. And so in some respects, your documents are a little frozen in time. But I did want to take that quick field trip, Mr. Carney, and I think there's other people that...
My problem is that Mr. Raleigh has to leave at 12. Andy, would you like to speak for a minute for tax? I don't have it.
Yeah, well, my name is John Leahy, and I would just like to, I'm an accountant, and I would like to say that we have a valuable asset here, and $500,000 after taxes is not much money for this property. We need water. We should be talking about capital maintenance and preventive maintenance and operation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vivi Antonini. I've had property here since the 70s. In fact, Campus Back Road was a dirt road when I came here. So I love this place. I could have moved anywhere. But why did I stay here? Because we're self-sufficient. The water, I don't buy water. I drink this water. So my question is, they're going to give us $500,000. No one gives you anything. So how are they going to recoup the $500,000? And after they recoup it by somehow, they're going to have to keep up. This is an investment for them. Well, all of us know that if you buy something or you go invest something, you do it to make money. So they're not here to give us good. They're here to make money. I mean, I can only assume. So no one just hands you $500,000 to clean up our water. They have to get the $500,000 back somehow from us, but continue to get it back more and more and more, and we can never give them up. We can't fire them. That's all I have to say. Think about it.
No.
Yes, my name is Andy Riley. I've been the accountant for Swan Keys, and I probably know a good majority of you, or met a good majority of you. As far as the sale is concerned, the way a condo or homeowner association works, if it's not from the members, it is going to be taxable. There is possibilities, and as I told George, until the board votes, or the people vote, whoever does, I'm not going to do a lot of research to waste time and energy and waste your money, because I don't like to do that. So, from a straight point, the basics is it's all taxable from $1. It's 30% at the federal level and 8.7% at the state level. There's possibly be some capital gains there, and there is a potential for possibly some lower tax rates. The complications, and as I told George, I would not go all into detail. There is other ways, because just because you're a condo association or a homeowners association, there is other ways to lower the taxes through the tax code for this type. Because we can make it, because you are a corporation, we could push it into a corporation taxability situation, which could drop the federal level down to potentially, this is potentially, without doing the research, because the new tax code law changed, this went in effect in 2018. There's some weird things in there that change stuff that was able to be done that it can't be done, just because they left one little word out. But based on my knowledge and everything, there is the potential to possibly lower it to 21% at the federal level. But it is going to be taxable.
Any questions for Andy? Thank you.
Andy, is a lease possible?
Now,
Hold on, Kevin asked me a question, is a lease possible? The lease would still be taxable, but again, we'd have to dig into every little aspect. Maybe there would be expenses that could help offset that lease income, so it's all not taxable. But that would have to be researched and determined at that time. But a lease would be a potential item, but right off the top, it's going to be taxable, yes.
thank you.
Excuse me, sir. You're the accountant?
Yes.
You are the accountant? All right, so your professional opinion in this community here, your personal, what would you do? Would you give up your asset that's a money-making asset that you handle and you own yourself and then sell it for less money? Would you do that personally?
Let me say something. None of our experts want to put themselves on a limb because it's not their decision. And they all told me that. The water engineer, everybody here, he's not going to commit to what he do.
He's got a vote. Does he live in the community?
I do not live in this community as the accountant, and as the accountant, you always look for your best options. This is not my vote, and I told George this right from the get-go. This is the community's vote. I only take care of making sure that you're legally covered from the IRS standpoint, with the tax returns being filed and making sure all your numbers are in good shape.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Hi. Thank you. I'm Estelle Martin. I've been a homeowner here since 2010. And I've heard this discussion about our water well system. And I understand we've replaced the tanks and we've actually replaced a couple filters. But the question I ask, and before I could even make a decision, and I'm sure it's going through your minds too, is if we keep the system, how much is it going to cost us? Because this is an important factor. How much is it going to cost us to upgrade this system to get it up to current codes and standards? And also, actually, there's old equipment in there. There's electronics that I saw in the pictures out here that there's old electronics in there that need to be upgraded because they're bad, and your system could go out at any point in time and we'd be out of water. That's wrong. But the other thing that I saw in the pictures was that we're getting our iron waste. We're just dumping it into the cistern or the cauldron out here, and that's not in accordance with code. We're going to be caught for that at some point in time. So that the question I have is, what does it cost? What's it going to cost us to get this system and keep it maintained? And that's the question that we all should be asking before we can make a decision.
And how much does the water operator cost?
And how much does the water operator going to cost us? But
And will that increase our
We
dues?
need to see. Those numbers I think that we need to see before we can make a decision.
the answer to that question, I've got to hold you, and I've got Artesian standing out here in the hall.
Let him wait for 500,000.
No, I I have an engineer's report that tells you we need $30,000 to $50,000 per year put in a reserve account just to keep it up to snuff. Okay, not repair it, not add it. Okay.
So the experts.
Would you ask Artesian to come in?
Well, I think these guys should have been.
Kevin Burnett is going to speak after Artesian, obviously. And like I say, with Kevin's knowledge, I think you're going to find a lot about regulations and the actual functioning of the system we have. By the way, just to add to the engineer's report, you can pick these up in the office. We have them. It's open to everybody. He's recommending a new vendor to support our system. And that's what I was alluding to earlier. He talks about valves and valve replacement. He talks about the annual reserve being $30,000 to $50,000 is recommended to cover major unexpected issues.